We'll ask everyone to please take a seat at this time. We're about to begin the services for Milton A. Goodman. We welcome everyone here at the chapel as well as everyone online. For those of you that are in the chapel, just a gentle reminder, if you have a cell phone with you, please make sure it's on the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Officiating today is Rabbi Lisa Bellows, Congregation Beth Am.
Friends, if you are wearing a ribbon, I'll come and meet you sort of in front so that we can offer the ritual of the tearing of the ribbon, which reminds us, although we don't need much reminding, of the tear that is in our hearts with this loss. For friends on Zoom, we'll make sure that people can hear. And there's a particular blessing. If you're wearing the ribbon, why don't we do this? We'll say, you'll repeat after me, and then we'll gather in front and I'll tear the ribbon, or you can tear the ribbon from the bottom up. The blessing of this ritual called Kriya is Baruch Atah Adonai, Dayan Ha'emet. Blessed are you, God, Judge of truth, who is with us in times of joy and also in times of sorrow and challenge.
Some people wear this ribbon for just today, some people for 7 days, the period of Shiva, and for some 30 days. Adonai ma adam v'teda'ehu, bein enosh v'tichashavehu. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace." We are here to celebrate the life of Milton Goodman. Perhaps for all of us, when we hear the name Milton Goodman, a smile can come on the face. Such goodness, such a nice person.
And his death also unites us, just like it did in life. That connection cannot be severed. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks. In times like this, in times of challenge and sadness, we turn to family and to friends for strength and for comforting. We also turn to the words of our psalmist, King David. King David was a man who wrote about issues of loss, of love, of life, and also of death. You have the 23rd Psalm in the inside cover of your leaflet. I'll offer some in Hebrew, and let's join together in the English. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menachot yenachaleni. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backwards or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death, to life everlasting. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, we read that there's a time to keep silent and a time to speak, to share words and memories. We invite Milton's daughter, Maxine, and granddaughter, Rosie, to come forward.
I want to thank each and every one of you for being with my family today as we say goodbye to my dad. As of 10 p.m. last night, I chose to not be doing this. I told Gordy and Rosie it was just too much. I was exhausted from the last 2.5 months. I don't know if a lot of you know what had happened, and it's a long story, but my dad was in the hospital for like 75 days. Of which daily visits to the hospital or rehab, multiple calls to 911 to pick him up when he was able to come home for 24 hours. My dad's last 2 weeks were tumultuous and very scary, to say the least. We thought with each incident that my dad would rebound because that's really what he did for us and for himself. He would have a little physical therapy. He'd come back home. Home to my dad. That's another thing. Since my mom passed away, my dad, for those of you who know him well, he did not even know how to scramble an egg. He did not really even know how to put a light bulb in, let alone use a remote control as his grandchildren. The thing was his computer. So home for my dad, he moved in with Gordy and I. My kids were in college. And I thought it was going to last a year, but honestly, it was 11 years because my dad was easy and he was good. And it was a no-brainer for me, really. Number one thing, home to my dad, his dogs, which were really my dogs, but his dogs. Really, the loves of his life. For someone, I don't really know anyone who loved a dog more than he did. During the last 2.5 months, on a daily basis, when we would walk into the hospital, he would not say, "How are the kids? How are you?" He would say, "How are Marigold and Simon? And do you think that they would remember me?" And I'm like, "Dad, if soldiers can go to Afghanistan for 4 or 5 years, or Iraq, and they come home and their dogs are all over them, they're going to remember you." Wow, Jimmy. So honestly, he did come home for 8 days to our new house, and the dogs remembered him. And we have pictures that are not to be believed of my dad, even with an oxygen tank, with the dogs all over him. That was the big thing of his life. Number 2, sports. And I'm going to look at my uncle over here. Sports. I grew up in a household that honestly, if you were a Goodman girl, which there's several out here, you were inundated with the background of TV and radio, whatever it was in the time, of sports. And it didn't matter what sport it was, because it would be basketball, football, golf, tennis, parachute. I mean, it didn't really matter. You had to really love sports, which I honestly really didn't. So one of the biggest things for my dad and I, especially in COVID, was because I was sort of a prisoner with him in COVID, he would be like telling me all these different like plays, and I would say, "What's the difference between a tight end and a quarterback?" And he's like, "Well, wasn't Josh a tight?" And I don't, like, "Dad, I sat like this watching Josh play football because I was scared he was going to not get hurt. He was going to hurt someone." So it was very funny, my dad and his family's take on sports. For me, a big thing during a sporting event would be, I love that uniform. The colors are perfect. And my dad's like looking at me, like I lost my mind. And then I was just relaying this to Sammy and Carmen. My dad, a staunch White Sox fan. And I know that there's a ton of you Cub fans out here watching, Zooming, whatever. But he was a South Sider from Indiana. So that was an undivided family of constant. The one thing he would do, he would watch the crosstown game. He would watch that. I mean, he did. He watched the crosstown game. And it was more about the city of Chicago for him at that point, not really the Cubs or the Sox or whatever. But I had a little secret that he found out about during COVID. He said to me, it seems like looking back, you knew a lot about the Cubs during a certain time in your life when I really didn't know you knew about the Cubs. Well, Rosie told him, she was like maybe 5 or 6. Mommy is watching this player with red hair. I think she's got a big crush on him. And it was Rick Sutcliffe. So, which was the truth. And then in COVID, my dad started YouTubing. So I could see, I didn't know Rick Sutcliffe was then a sports announcer. And it was like, wow, this is really weird. Okay, so that's the sports, and I'm sure people will be talking about sports later. The other biggest thing in his life, politics. Politics. He was really, he was against the war in Vietnam. He was big on the civil rights movement. He hated you-know-who. As a matter of fact, and I keep looking over to my uncle, I had said to him when my dad gets home, because I really, honestly, you guys, I thought he was coming home, I'm going to put a big poster with a big red X, and everybody can come and use whatever swear word they want to use. That's going to be his welcome home. So until his last minute, and I believe he was talking to Carmen a couple hours before he passed away, he was discussing on oxygen, gasping for breath, his feelings about abortion and the upcoming election. And that is where we thought, wow, he's going to come home. But he didn't come home. So my dad was a person, he hated no one. He had no temper. The only temper he had was probably anything that had to do, honestly, with Trump. Or if there was a bad call in a game, he would take the remote, throw it at the TV, throw it on the floor, whatever. The last thing in my dad's life was his family. A family that had suffered a real lot of loss, like you all know. And my dad never really, he lost my brother, my mom. There were some other people who had passed away in my life. My dad, I never saw him cry because he wasn't going to cry. He was going to take the family and he was going to get us as strong as could be. For every death, we were not going to not have a holiday. We were going to he would say to me, it would be so important to Mom. But I thought about it this morning. It wasn't important to Mom. It was important to him. For his family to just pick themselves up and do what we needed to do after each person had left our life, and we were navigating ourselves through a lot of loss, and he was our biggest cheerleaders. It didn't matter which one of you did whatever crazy thing you did, the tattoos, the piercings, the whatever it was, he did not care. He was current. He was okay with it. He loved his family. He loved his grandchildren. There's a big shout out, and I don't even know if this person is here. First and foremost, his brother, Sam. You have been unbelievable to the family in the last few months and to my dad for a long time. I can, because of the fact that my dad was hard of hearing, he was always on speaker with Sam every single day. And they call each other babe. Hey, babe, did you watch the game last night? Okay, and then I'd have to walk away because they would go through every single play and get this and that. You were wonderful, and believe me, that relationship will last a long time in my head. I don't know if Gary Goodman is here today, but Gary Goodman, unbelievable. The support that you've given me personally in the last month, without a doubt. I know that there's a lot of people that I'm probably not really going to be able to remember or whatever. A call from my dad's old friend, Jimmy Del Giorno, the other day had me in tears. It was really, really something. So for all of you, Renee and Sandy, you have been part of my dad's life forever. Lori Stone, there's just, to see you here, it's really something. And unfortunately, some of my friends aren't here. I'm hoping, and there's something I do want to say. Jeff Wolf, if you are Zooming this, for your mom, Lenore, I love you. My dad loved you. You were everything to him. So hopefully, and there's one person who's not here for me today, and that is my beloved friend, Lori Ches, who was like another daughter to my dad. with Lori, the addiction you had, giving him the care of cashews, and just all the stuff. I'm thinking of everybody who's not here today. I'm happy that we're able to have who we are, because I have a few friends who in COVID did not have what we're able to do today. So it may not be everybody who felt comfortable, but I do thank everybody who is here today, because honestly, in the last few days, just the phone calls, my dad was really loved. He was a really great guy.
Wow, how do you follow that up? You have me. Okay, I've been really struggling for the past few days on what to share. I've been stressed and overwhelmed, wanting to say the right thing and also include everyone's sentiments, stories, memories. Milt has been a son, brother, uncle, cousin, dad, in-law, grandpa, great-grandpa, colleague, and friend to so many over the course of his 86 years. I can't possibly include everything from everyone, so here we go. What's in a name? Milton Goodman. Good man. I think every one of you would agree that Milt was the very definition of a good man. He had a heart of gold. He knew no enemies. He was kind to everyone he crossed paths with, whether he just met you or he knew you for years. His wife and friends affectionately referred to him as Goody, a nickname that just made sense. But before he was Goody, I'd like to talk about Ace. I only knew of Milt Ace because it was my grandpa's password for nearly everything. Can you tell me what Ace was about? I asked his brother Sam last week. Would you know, my grandpa had 2 nicknames in high school and college. Sometimes he was referred to as Paul Milt because he smoked Pall Malls. And sometimes he was called Ace. Ace. It's hard to remember a time where my grandpa didn't have to be screamed at. He was hard of hearing before most people become hard of hearing, which my grandma Ilene blamed on Miles Davis's bright, brassy trills blaring through their car speakers. He tapped, slightly offbeat, along his steering wheel to Duke and Louie. He tried to scat along with Ella. He kind of whistled. Maybe it was closer to like the ch in tchotchke and a whistle, like along to the beat of the drums. His love for jazz started in high school with his cool cat friends hanging out at jazz clubs in Calumet City. My Uncle Sammy painted this picture. Imagine Milt in a Mr. B shirt with a rolled collar, wearing draped pants. You know, they're wide and then they narrow at the cuffs. A ducktail hairstyle. Call me Ace, I imagine him saying, pushing his black-rimmed glasses against the bridge of his nose, smoking Pall Malls, looking dapper, and maybe a little bit of bad boy cool like James Dean. It must have been so easy for Eileen to fall in love. You know, they met at a Jewish dance where, and I quote, my grandma's ample bosom and radiant smile made them inseparable. Together with their best friends, Gladys and Pookie, the foursome went everywhere and did everything together. Prom, movie theater date nights, Jewish community dances, and of course, pizza at John's. Milt and Pookie were the best of friends until Pookie's death, which actually falls 10 years ago to the day today. And if you knew my grandma, she would say, wow, Basher, it's meant to be. Ace eventually went on to pharmacy school, married Eileen, and lovingly became Goody to all those that knew him. Goody blessed all of us with 3 children, Max, Lori, and Mark. Although he lost both of his parents early in life, Milt worked really hard to provide a beautiful life for his family during the often tumultuous 1960s. Those days probably molded the heavily political do-gooder that Milt became. An activist for the Vietnam War. No, seriously, ask my mom about the rally they went to and the black matching armbands. He was an ardent supporter of civil rights in the MLK era. Till his very last day, he complained about Trump, the current state of affairs in a terribly divided and racist country, and recognized that the vote on abortion would be vital in the next round of seats. His words, really. We watched together on a random Wednesday day off of mine as the insurrection took place, and I remember his somber yet wide eyes in awe of what was taking place. This country is up in flames. I imagine how hard it was to process all of these terrible events recently. The man with a heart of gold, always wishing for the best. The silver lining, ways to give back. He and my grandma volunteered all throughout my childhood, working with Red Cross, Salvation Army, American Heart Association, and City of Hope. Everything from packing box lunches to calling bingo to writing generous checks. After he retired, Milt was recruited to assist in forming Community Health, the only completely volunteer nonprofit clinic for low-income, uninsured patients in this country. This was something so near and dear to his heart. He first recruited all of his city grandchildren that needed volunteer hours in order to graduate. Yep, we joined him. And then he recruited my grandma. And about 10 years ago, he even recruited his brother, Sam. They made a day of it, volunteering at the same time and then going out for a bite afterwards. Once COVID entered our world, my grandpa was never able to safely return to community health, which really bugged him. Should you be curious, please check out their website and know my grandpa is listed as an alumni. To think he started volunteering with them over 20 years ago is wild. In his early career, Milt chose to leave his family pharmacies, finding himself at Mary and Merrill Dow as a drug rep within the Midwest territory. As a kid, I remember his colleagues, Jimmy and Marie, Ira and Margot, Bill, Larry, Emil. Did I leave anyone out? With my grandpa not here to remind me, my deepest apologies if I did. These guys opened their homes to our family, holidays, and celebrations. When Dow merged, Grandpa retired early, but his friendships with the guys lasted for years. In fact, he was so happy to call and tell every one of us about his most recent lunch, where they were finally able to catch up after COVID had kept them apart. For those of you in attendance today, know how much Milt enjoyed keeping in touch. He truly, truly loved those meetups. Milt enjoyed many things over the years. First up, let's talk about the dogs. There were so many. Most were really bad. They ate entire walls. Raw chicken still in plastic packaging. They bit mail carriers and they lunged at people. My grandpa even had a permanently bent finger from his first love, Lewis, pulling him down a flight of stairs, breaking his finger and never going and getting it properly set. He was so in love with that dog that my grandpa asked my mom to take Lewis to cross the Rainbow Bridge while away in St. Louis on business. About a week later, the deli manager at the grocery store couldn't understand why Milt suddenly stopped buying sliced chicken. Oh, that was for my dog, and we had to put him down. More dogs came and went, but his next love affair was with Sparky the pug. They were basically two old men together that spent all day eating, napping, snuggling, and snoring together. But let's not forget my grandpa's most recent pains in the tuchuses, Simon and Marigold. Those naughty little pups were his COVID buddies, giving him entertainment when we were working hard to keep my grandpa safe by being apart. Every single one of the 72 days that he was either in the hospital or in rehab, my grandpa asked about those dogs. How the dogs doing? They miss me? You think they'll remember me when I get home? Give them some treats for me, and make sure you have your mom put the treat box back in my room. You see, she had to take the treats away because he regularly fed the little 12-pound dogs half their weight in treats. Food, treats, feeding, it all meant love and affection. Food meant love. While we're on the subject, do you know where to find the best burger in the city? If you talk to Milt in the last few months, you'd know it's the region. Milt became diabetic about 25 years ago, and spent much of his 50s sneaking in food stops with as many of us as possible. Do you remember Cliff Huxtable hiding hoagies in the dishwasher from Claire? Yeah, that was similar to my grandpa offering to do errands that he didn't really want to do, but it meant he could lure Josh to join, and they would stop into any tiny hole-in-the-wall taqueria, dirty window hot dog joint, and of course, greasy spoon breakfast spot. He could point you in the direction of the best omelet, pizza, tamales, barbecue, steak sandwich. North side, south side, Indiana, St. Louis. Recently, being between hospitals and rehab left my grandpa longing for a decent meal. The quickest way to his heart was a container of my mom's egg salad, a dozen wings that he had Lori buying from virtually every place that sold wings, and 10 pounds of carob cashews. At rehab, he told me he had, and I quote, a real taste for a hot dog. A hot dog? When was the last time you had one of those? Well, a plain hot dog was probably last time I was at a ball game. You see, the only thing he loved as much as the dogs and food was sports. A die-hard White Sox fan, my grandpa found a fast friendship with Ruben Amaro Sr., third base coach for the Cubs in the mid-'80s. This is actually another great story you should ask Lori about. I know that Ruben tried to bridge the gap between the north and south sides, and my grandpa got some prime seats, like right up there with the team's family. But he wouldn't step into the friendly confines for just anyone. On the night of the World Series win, before the game started, he called and said, "Rose, I hope your team wins tonight for you. Not for the Cubbies, for you." You hear that? Not too long ago in rehab, watching some important tennis match together, I asked, "Are there any sports you wouldn't watch?" Besides NASCAR, the Cubs. "Grandpa, the Cubs aren't sports." "Yeah, you can say that again," as he silently laughed while rubbing his stomach up and down. An iconic, "I think I am so funny" Milt move. He knew every stat on every golf, basketball, football, tennis, honestly, anything that was on, he watched and knew the details of. Scores, stats, and also the latest drama. He lived for the corked bat saga. For the man's 86 years, he was either watching, listening to, talking about, or coaching sports. Coach Goody. Milt coached Mark in his younger years and then became a staple at as many games as possible for Mikey, Josh, and Jacob. When Danielle and I chose to go like the music and theater route, he made sure to attend all of our performances. My grandpa showed up fiercely, teaching us how to drive. "Lay off the pedal, Leadfoot." To paying us to work for him by typing up consulting bills. And yes, everyone, I just realized last night, he only did that because he was computer illiterate. Throughout high school, I worked side by side on the weekends at the family coffee business, where he basically gave things away because he liked people so much or thought that they were such a great customer. He checked in, making his routine phone calls to daughters Lori and Carrie and brother Sammy. He lived with daughter Max for the last 10 plus years, and nobody knew his routine better than she did. She made sure my grandpa had everything he needed, from clean clothes to setting up his daily pills, all of his favorite treats, to reminding him to mute the TV if he was also listening to a video on full blast on his computer while also trying to take a call. There's a lot of sadness in this room, sure, but man, he loved all of you and would find something nice to say about how he knew you. He would do anything for anyone as long as he was able to. And I really tried to do the same for him. But you know what? His whole family tried to do that for him. I think what I'm going to miss most about him, damn it, I was doing so good, is the 2-minute phone call to say hi and ask, "When am I going to see you?" The way he asked if I was stopping at a store because he really wanted me to pick something up for him, but he would never want me to go out of my way. Or him shuffling into my parents' kitchen with his clippers in his hand and asking, "How about some nail clips?" But also him just genuinely interested in me. How's work? How's the new apartment? A million questions. I know I've been talking for the longest time and you all are just wondering when I'll stop. There are so many memories each of us hold and so many stories from different parts of his life. Please keep them coming. Call me and tell me your fondest, naughtiest, or most hilarious ones because it keeps his memory going. And please continue to wrap his family, Sam and Carmen, Gary, Lenore, Max and Gordy, Lori and Darnell, Carrie and Jim, Mikey, Edie and Edith, Nikki and Edith, sorry guys, Josh, Colleen, Danielle and Mac, Jacob, wrap us up right now as we grieve this monumental loss. Thank you.
You're so right. Sad as it is to lose him, and as big as it is to lose him, Milt lived a good and beautiful, long life. It was not without challenge, but it was beautiful because you were in it. He modeled what it means to really live life. He did have a lot of loss, especially within 5 years. His son and his beloved wife. And he said, we'll grieve as a family and we can move forward. He was your teacher. And in this way, all of our teachers. Lori said, you might have met a man as nice as my father, but you have never met anyone nicer. This is true and clear. And so now Milt lives through you. God knows the world needs some kindness and some direction. And each time you do for each other. Even each time you sneak someone a Frosty, an act of kindness, bring a smile and goodness into the world. And so he lives, not in the way we want him to, but in the only way he can, through you. And the world remains a better place because he was in it. Milton Goodman was a righteous man. May his name and his memory be for us, for Israel, and all the world a blessing. If you're able, please rise. Psalm 23 that we offered together was a reminder to the mourners that we are never alone. El Malay Rachamim is a prayer just for Milton, that he be received with love and care and great tenderness. El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Haraki HaMazirim Et Nishmat Moshe Ben Mordechai Verivka Shahalach Le'olamo Bahal HaRachamim Yastirehu Beseter Kenafav Le'olamim V'yitzvor B'yitzvor HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach B'shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Milton Goodman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. We say together, Amen. We'll remain standing, and the last prayer we say together is at the back of the leaflet called the Mourner's Kaddish. We say the Kaddish at this time, even though the prayer itself has not one word about death in it. It's about the gratitude that we have for our loved one being in our life. Together, Yitkadal v'yitkada shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivorach leolam olamei omaya. Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn and grant comfort to all who are bereaved. We say together, Amen.
Immediately following the service today, the family will be accepting condolence calls at Max and Benny's Restaurant at 461 Waukegan Road in Northbrook, immediately following the service today until 6 p.m. And also the memorial contributions have been requested to the Community Health in Chicago. The address is on the folder that you received on your way in and also online. This does conclude the service. Thank you.